Welcome to Drop Your Buffs, a podcast discussing Survivor Game Changers. And tonight we're talking about the episode that aired on the 13th of April, 2017. Of course, that's the 13th of April Australian time. I guess that was probably the 12th of April US time where it originally aired. With me tonight, as usual, Craig, how's it going?
I'm well, Stuart. How are you going?
Pretty good. It's
excellent.
It was a pretty run-of-the-mill episode, this one, wasn't it?
No, that's not
Not really.
not at all how I described this episode. Not at all. Well, it was for the first 2/3 of it, I guess. But then obviously we'll get to what happened at Tribal Council. It's an episode I think we'll always remember.
That's well, it was until the very end. I was sort of thinking this is probably one of the most boring episodes of Survivor ever because really not much of note really happened at all, did it? And then. It got to the sort of, the sort of 2/3 mark, and I could see that that after the ad break, we're about to come into Tribal Council. It seemed really early, so I thought this must be a particularly long Tribal Council coming up, so something's going to happen.
Yeah, it's always a bit of a sign, isn't it? Normally what it means is there's been some tied vote and they've had to re-vote or draw rocks or make fires or do something like that. That's quite often what happens when you have a long Tribal Council, but obviously that wasn't the case tonight. There certainly were clues if you hadn't already been spoiled and hadn't caught up with what was going on on social media today. Yes, it would have been quite a shock.
Yes, no, we will certainly.
We'll get to that
more later on.
Yep.
But I certainly didn't know anything apart from a very cryptic text from you earlier, Craig, and then after that, I just sort of tried not to look at anything anyway, and just take it as it came. So
yeah, I was at work and I was unable to avoid the discussion because it was all over the news websites this afternoon at work, so I wasn't able to avoid it. But Stu is on holidays and not really following your social media too closely at the moment.
No, I wasn't. I wasn't plugged in today, so I missed that one. But yeah, well, just before we get talking to the actual episode, I'd just like to say that thanks for everyone that listens to the podcast. It's great to have you all there with us and talking about Survivor. And we'd just like to try and generate a few more iTunes reviews for the podcast because that really helps us just to try and sort of bump up our ratings a little bit to try and just make us a bit more visible on the iTunes network. So if you would like to support us just by leaving us a review would be fantastic. I have made a special little website link that can make it just that little bit easier for you to get there because I know that iTunes doesn't make it completely easy to leave reviews, but if you just go to dropyourbuffs.com/review, that should take you straight to our podcast link, to our podcast page where you can choose there should be a button there that says write a review. And if you could do that for us, that would be fantastic. We'd really appreciate it.
Sure. That'd be absolutely awesome. We appreciate the support.
Okay, should we get into the episode, Craig?
Let's get into the episode, which begins with everyone reeling from Sandra's shock departure at the previous Tribal Council.
Yes, that's right.
And of course, Debbie has returned from the MS Exile and has joined Nuku Tribe, replacing Sandra, who was voted out. And of course, Debbie joins the Nuku Tribe with an advantage of an extra vote in her pocket.
I know, and she was really trying to say, she was really saying how bad Exile Island was and how tough it was and so on. But I don't know, she was just a bit too chipper though, wasn't she? I thought that she really could have acted just that little bit more, sort of washed out.
A bit more downcast. Yeah, you reckon?
I know. That's right.
Well, she clearly stated though that she's taking the view what happens on Exile stays on Exile. That her lips are sealed and that she won't be revealing to anybody that she had really quite a good couple of days. Met one of the greats of the game, got some good advice, and returned probably quite rejuvenated.
I wonder how the producers are going to deal with this Exile Island, because usually in the past when they've had Exile Island, it's something that recurs every week. Someone goes to Exile Island every week.
Yeah.
So that didn't happen
right.
this week, so are they just going to do this on an ad hoc basis, or it's?
Well, we talked about this last week, didn't we? We wondered about whether this is just a one-off, or are we going to see Cochrane again? or was that literally just a one-off thing that happened that they won't be reprising? I have no idea. Time will tell, I guess. Time will tell. Yeah. So anyway, so Debbie's joined. We heard from Varner, Jeff Varner, saying his view was he'd been blindsided at that tribal council, and he was pretty mad, and he wanted to punch the people in the throat, which I thought was a bit extreme. And then we saw him and Zeke having a bit of a chat on the beach, and Zeke basically saying that he wanted to work with Jeff through to the end of the game. Go on.
Like I thought that, like those two really seemed to bond, didn't they?
Certainly at that point, yeah. So that was a little preview, just coming out the back end of the last tribal council, and then off we went to a reward challenge.
Yeah, sorry, Craig. Just going back to that discussion with Zeke, I think Zeke has such a strong social game, and I think whenever he has a one-on-one chat with anyone, I think he seems to find some common bond, doesn't he? I think that everyone walks away from a discussion with Zeke feeling like they've bonded with him. I think that's right, and in some of the subsequent things that have been written today since then, I think the comment that he wanted to work with Jeff through to the end of the game that he made on the episode tonight, he's confirmed in things that he's written as something that he was quite genuine about. That is something he wanted to do. So that wasn't just strategic play going on there. That was his from what I've read anyway. That seemed to be the way he genuinely did want to play the game from this point onwards. We'll get to that. Here we are at the challenge. No product placement here, Stu. Did you notice that? It was pizza and it was ice cold soft drinks. It wasn't Coke, it wasn't Pepsi, it wasn't Mountain Dew, it wasn't any of that stuff. It was ice cold soft drink. No, that's right. Well, they haven't had any product placements really for a long time, have they? I don't think.
This was quite different to the Australian series of Survivor, where we seemed to have Hungry Jacks.
That's right.
Remember Hungry Jacks turned up? Remember those elaborate displays of hamburgers on the beach there? Yes. The food stylist was very, very busy in the Australian Survivor season, but there was no product placement tonight. It was just ice cold soft drinks, and no samples were given to those poor hungry survivors, just to increase their motivation even more to win the challenge and go away with the various flavours of pizza that Jeff had for them.
Yeah, no, well, this one was just another sort of obstacle course to try and get a key, and then eventually we're untangling ropes and dropping keys and undoing knots and building a ladder and releasing a whole bag of balls and running through a net and then having to somehow work out what the word was using the balls that they collected. Well, it was all
sorry, sorry, I've got the wrong challenge. No, I'm talking about That's right. That's right. They had to launch off the little catapult thing, didn't they, into the baskets?
That's right. Yeah. It was all fairly standard Survivor fare, wasn't it?
Yeah. And look, once again, Aussie just displayed his amazing physical prowess and coordination and dexterity to really do well here.
Yeah, well, he just basically won that for Nuku, didn't he?
He did. Culpepper was going okay. Culpepper to me though looked like he was struggling a little bit physically. Did you get that sense?
No. But I guess with this one though, he wasn't actually throwing a ball. He had to sort of jump onto a platform, sort of
a bit more difficult.
So it's not what he's normally used to, I guess, in terms of throwing balls.
Yeah, exactly. But look, Aussie once again proved himself to be an absolute gun, and Nuku really needed that after having lost Sandra at the last tribal council.
And Sari, wasn't she basically saying that she feels emotionally broken? Was that the word she said? It was something to that effect, anyway.
Yeah, it was something like that. I mean, we sort of got, before we got to see Nuku eating their pizza, we got taken over to Mana to see how they were all sort of faring on day 17, and they were chopping coconuts, and there was a bit of talk there about 10 pizzas, wouldn't that have been fantastic? But then there was the whole tribe sitting around having a chat about how this game just breaks you down, and you're not eating and your mind goes to strange places, and we heard some really interesting, what I thought were really interesting comments coming out of from Aubrey and Culpepper, and particularly about how the game had changed then previously. Culpepper talked about his wife Monica, who played all the way to day 39 in her season, and how she changed, but that people don't understand that when they go back home and back to their real lives. I thought that was a really fascinating insight into what Survivor does to the contestants that are on the show.
Yeah, and it is something that they probably deal with almost every season. There'll be some point where the mental strain really begins to show, and just people just don't act themselves. And
yeah,
I wonder in some way if that was a bit of foreshadowing for what happens later in the episode too.
Oh, look, potentially. But yeah, if you haven't eaten or slept, you haven't eaten properly since basically the beginning of the season, and you're not getting a lot of sleep because A, it's uncomfortable, B, it's cold, C, you're just not eating properly, you've got a million things going through your mind. It'd be tough, wouldn't it?
Well, that's right. Well, I mean, this is how governments torture people, isn't it? Through methods like this. It's yeah.
That's true, but I think what came out the back end of that was possibly, I think, an interesting alliance that might have formed there. So we already knew that Troyzan, Sierra, and Culpepper were reasonably tight, but then the conversations that were going on then between Culpepper and Aubrey, and also Suri and Culpepper, might have brought them into that circle as well.
Yeah, Aubrey was even saying Brad is the most genuine person out here, which really, I was quite surprised about that.
Yeah,
so, and I really have a lot of respect for Aubrey, and so therefore I now respect Brad a lot more than I did before.
Yeah, well, yeah, she's we saw her in a previous season go. I think she went all the way to the end, didn't she?
I think so. I think she made the final.
I'm pretty sure she made the final. Yeah, and no, she was thanking him for opening up, and as you say, talking about how genuine he was, and Suri said something similar. She said that she felt she was getting closer to Culpepper, and it was almost a nice little moment that the Mana tribe had there against the background of not having anything to eat, knowing that.
Oh, they were all in tears.
Oh yeah, it was.
They were all in tears, I think so.
Obviously, a very emotional experience for them. So, having seen that,
exactly. There's just complete contrast going over to the Nuku tribe, wasn't there?
Yeah, it was. They're into the pizza, and the first voice we heard from was Ozzy, who said, "Look, just how important it was for the tribe morale to have won that challenge." And I mean, I think having just seen what was going on over at Mana, I don't think a truer word was spoken.
But I think that he's just trying to hammer that home because he knows that he won that reward for them, basically, didn't he?
Of course he did. Yeah,
and that's why he wants people to remember who won this reward for you.
Well, I think Debbie's on his side. I mean, Debbie said, "Ozzy, you're a beast." Once again, Debbie comes out with the entertaining one-liner to say, "Yeah, Ozzy, you're a beast," she said. Amazing. But then we started perhaps just the hint of what might have been to come. We had Varna saying things like, I need to throw I think he said need to throw the shade onto someone else. So very much trying to get this target off his back that he felt was there and getting that onto other people. And I guess that's a little bit of a theme that started to come through. But at that point, he was suggesting to get rid of Ozzy.
Yeah, that's right. And you could see him talking to Sarah, and she at that point seemed to be on board with voting out Ozzy, didn't she?
Yeah, she did. She was sort of saying things like that Jeff Varna was someone they could use as part of their strategy. So that was the angle that Jeff Varna was trying to push at that point. And he made a comment there at one stage, didn't he, about he's sick of sort of alpha people getting to the end, and it's time for the little guys to get through. So, just a little snippet, perhaps, of what was coming.
Yeah, well, I guess Ozzy was the only sort of person you could sort of pick out as being a possible target apart from himself. Being such a strong challenger. Yeah,
that's right.
So that's all he was going for, I think. But then we get to day 18 and we've got the community challenge.
That's right. Once again, we're out in the water, which was set up beautifully for Ozzy to do his thing, and he did. Swimming.
It was set out in the middle of the reef, wasn't it?
It looked
fantastic.
Yeah, it looked pretty nice. Short swim to a raft, and then releasing buoys along the way, which were releasing all these balls that were needed to solve a 13-letter word puzzle that came later. I think Nuku sort of got through the first part of that challenge with a huge lead.
That's right.
Thanks largely to Ozzy's efforts.
That's right. Yep.
But when it came to working out what the word was, it ended up being it was Mana that came through with the goods and worked out the word was metamorphosis, which is amazing how prophetic that proved to be.
Yeah, well, I think it was Haley who worked at that, wasn't it, on the Mana
Oh, yeah, it
5?
was.
So I'm not
And
sure.
Suri went with it. Suri just said, "Look, yeah, let's try it and see if it works."
Yeah.
And so she was fully on board. I think everyone over at Nuku were coming up with ideas. I don't think you can say they just stood there and didn't know what they were doing. They seemed to be coming up with different words, and they weren't quite working. I think they were quite reasonable to be using the shipwreck theme as a potential source of what the word might be.
That's right.
But the end result was no. Mana came through the goods. Nuku goes to tribal council for the second tribal council in a row, and we left that challenge with Varna saying that he's in trouble, and but he was going to vote for Aussie.
But how spooky was it that what that word was though for that challenge? It was.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean when I say quite prophetic.
Yeah, exactly.
In the way things ultimately turned out, that they would use that was the word.
And it's not a typical word that they would use in a puzzle on Survivor either. It was a very weird word to even start with, So it was all just very, very strange, wasn't it?
Well, I guess it goes with the whole game-changing sort of theme, and
yeah, that's true.
I think that's probably where it came from. But it came to mean so much more for so many people when we finally got to tribal council. But before that, we had the normal scrambling. Normal scrambling went on back at Nuku.
Yes, that's right.
After the tribe. We had Varna, who was trying to deflect a bit of attention there. He's sort of saying, well, no one did anything wrong. And I think he's right there. No one did anything wrong. As I said, they were trying to come up with ideas, and they just weren't quick enough. And I don't think I would have ever thought of metamorphosis.
No.
But he just asked the opportunity with everyone to be able to plead his case, and I assume that happened. We didn't see all of that, but I assume that happened.
Yeah, I have never been a big fan of Varna, I guess, to be honest, and just sort of seeing his game in previous seasons, he always seemed a bit. He always seemed to be a bit of a slippery sort of character in terms of shifting alliances and deceptions and lies and things like that as well, and just something that you couldn't really trust. And so when he talked about having a one-on-one with everyone, I couldn't really see that. I'm sure that the others would know what he was like from his previous games as well, wouldn't they? So how trustworthy they would find him.
Yeah, you think so, but I think he was quite successful though in just injecting that little bit of doubt into people's minds that perhaps Aussie and Zeke might have been working together, despite what was being said by them that Aussie and Zeke perhaps may have been a bit stronger and closer and more aligned than people thought they were, and that was making people, particularly Sarah, a little bit nervous about where things were at. Zeke was keen to keep Varna at that point. Sarah was throwing Aussie's name out there. Debbie, Ty, and particularly Andrea was a bit unsure, and she said at one stage she was quite conflicted about what to do. But I think by the end of that scrambling, it did look to me like it was probably about 50-50 Aussie versus Varna. Would you agree with that?
Well, certainly that's what they were trying to make us think, but I thought Zeke made a good point because he said that his reason for going for or for keeping Aussie around was that he likes having a bigger target than himself around, which makes a lot of sense.
Yep. A perfectly valid survivor strategy, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's quite clever. I don't know whether I don't remember seeing any particular actual alliance between Zeke and Aussie though. Did you recall seeing anything, Craig?
No, I don't recall anything at all. I mean, I was struggling to think of many situations in which we've seen them actually sort of talking very much. And obviously, we only see an hour of footage over 3 days of what goes on. So who knows how much they were they were working together or dealing with each other. Just that we just don't see. But no, certainly I don't think there's been very much that we've been shown that would lead you to think that Aussie and Zeke are particularly tight from a Survivor Alliance point of view.
I just assumed it was something that Varna was just making up just to further his case, basically.
Oh, and I absolutely think that's what it was. It was really just trying to throw some uncertainty and doubt into the equation, and certainly Sarah did seem to have picked up on that and was a little bit concerned about where it was going. But look, coming out the back end of all that scrambling, and it might not have been as obvious had I not known what was coming, but Varna did make a comment about, he did say that there was something that he knew that no one else knew, that no one else knew, and then who was going to raise a tribal council and make mortal hell. So that were his exact words. So I heard that and went, oh my gosh, here we go. So so off we went to tribal council.
Yeah, well, straight away Jeff Probst launches into Varna and says that Varna seems to be on the bottom, which I think Varna basically agreed with. It's
I think even if events hadn't transpired the way they were, I really think it would have been Varna that went home anyway. That's just my view. I think that's the way it would have panned out. I mean, there wasn't a huge amount said at tribal council prior to the bombshell being dropped.
No,
that wasn't easy to watch. That wasn't easy to watch, was it, Stu?
No. Well, I mean, I had no knowledge of what was going to happen because thus far, as I said earlier, it was a pretty boring episode of Survivor. It was very much a standard. Nothing. There were no big surprises. There were no idols found or played or lost or anything like that. It was all pretty standard stuff, really.
Yeah.
And so Jeff starts bringing up this secret alliance between Zeke and Ozzy, and then he just drops the bombshell about Zeke being transgender and why he hasn't told that to everyone else in the tribe.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, how could you?
Yeah, and I was shocked by the instant reaction to some of the other tribe members, particularly Andrea and Ty. You know, like they were just completely floored. Zeke himself, he just looked totally deflated, and it was, you know, especially for those first sort of few seconds, that was just terrible.
Look, Jeff Probst has been interviewed today and has described that, and he describes it as in the scheme of things, a fairly minor sort of moment that just happened, and everyone. But obviously, it was, but in the sense that people talk, including himself, he was sort of sitting there thinking, "Wow, was that just said? Did that just happen?" And it took everyone a while, with a few exceptions, but it took everyone a while to sort of process it before things really started getting quite serious at that tribal council. It just arrived. The moment just arrived with absolutely no warning, and all of a sudden here we were in the middle of a profoundly personal and very serious moment.
Well, I did. It showed Jeff Probst looking himself. He was totally shocked as well, wasn't he? You could just see the expression on his face. He was taken aback.
Yeah, it was just on so many levels. I mean, this is reality TV, but there is that line, isn't there? It's easy to think of people on a reality TV show as just characters in a TV show, but they're not. They're real people. They have real lives. They have real feelings, and there's no doubt that a line was crossed. No question of that. I mean, it was just so hard. And it applies to all of us in our lives. I mean, everyone ultimately acts in their own self-interest, but you always have to be mindful of the people you are working with, you are dealing with regularly. There is a line, and there are lines that should not be crossed. And it really just demonstrated that very clearly. That there are just lines. There are just lines.
Yeah, no. As Ozzy said, he just said to Jeff, he said, "You should be ashamed." Which is he wasn't impressed at all. What really got me was Zeke said the real kicker was that he actually really liked Jeff.
Yeah, I know.
He was just starting to get to know him, and that just shows what a great guy Zeke is, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, look, clearly he was clearly shocked and just amazed at what was going on, but he maintained a very calm, dignified sort of demeanor throughout all of that. I thought the things he said in response again were very calm, and I mean he could have gone completely off the handle, but he didn't. And I think what he did was he used an awful situation for him personally, or tried to use an awful situation for him personally to try and extract at least some positives out of it. And I think he achieved that.
Yeah, well, I mean, right about that time, there was an ad break, which was halfway through this tribal council, and I sort of turned to my family and we were talking about it, and I was saying, should the producers have even aired this tribal council? And as I was sort of thinking it through, because it was all just a big shock at the time as well, was that I thought, well, probably what's happened is Zeke has probably given them permission to do that because because as he later said, he wanted to this to end up being a positive thing for other people like him.
Yeah.
And not come up as some negative sort of thing. So that I assume that's what must have happened.
I haven't seen anything on that today, but I hope that is what that's what happened. That was aired with his agreement. Look, I think if anyone, something very interesting I read today. Well, Zeke has written his personal experience, not only of his life but also that event on Survivor's Day, and it's been published on HollywoodReporter.com. It's a pretty amazing read. So for anyone who is interested in learning more about what happened that night and the aftermath and various other things, HollywoodReporter.com is Zeke's personal story that he's written today.
Okay.
Jeff, and I have read it. It's excellent. It's absolutely excellent. It's an amazing thing that he's written.
Yeah, I've only just I've basically watched the episode and then started this podcast with you, Craig. So I haven't had the chance to do any other research or read about what's gone on. I've only seen a tweet from Zeke. I'm not sure if you saw this one that I thought was very good. He said, "We cannot control the hazards we face. We can only control how we respond. Love each other."
Oh, that's excellent, and that's exactly what he did. He was controlled in the face of a pretty extreme moment in his life, and as I say, I think he was motivated by a desire to turn this into a positive, and I do think he achieved that. Jeff Varner has also tweeted a very public apology. It went out 10 minutes after the program went to air in the United States, and he makes no excuses for what happened and makes some very strong statements about what happened. And that's worth having a look at as well. So that's on Jeff Varner's Twitter page. And beyond that, go on.
Yeah, well, basically Varner, at the during the tribal council, he maybe he didn't realise the backlash he was going to get at tribal council, but he tried to backpedal as hard as he could at the time, didn't he? And as Jeff Probst said, you can't unring the bell.
No. And look, I think his remorse appeared to me to be very genuine. He said something he should not have said, and yes, he did try and backpedal a bit, but I think he realised very quickly that that should not have happened.
No.
So.
And then Jeff Probst basically makes an executive decision for the vote, didn't he, or to not bother voting for that tribal council?
Yeah, and look, I think that's one of my questions. Do you think that was the right decision? I absolutely think it was the right decision. He gave everyone the chance to contribute to that. It's not like he unilaterally evicted him. He did check with everyone that it's pretty clear, isn't it, who's going home. Everyone agreed with it. I think that was the right way to proceed. I think to go through with the vote would have was unnecessary and may have even been counterproductive.
Yeah, I don't think that anyone could have really have not voted for Varner, and it sort of gave more airtime, I guess, then to talk about the whole thing as well, rather than waste time on voting for something that was irrelevant.
Yeah.
But,
so that was that.
Yeah, but so after I was sort of thinking about all this, I was thinking, well, what does this mean for Zeke moving forward? I'm just thinking about the game now, so back to the game, and I was thinking he may now have more of a target on his back now, because he would be a strong contender for the sympathy vote if he made the final three, because he is already a very good speaker, and I think that he would have a lot of support if he made the final three as well, and so people might be trying to get rid of him before he even gets there now, even more than they thought so before.
Well, I would just reflect on what he said himself, and that is that he wants to be known as Zeke, the Survivor player, and nothing more than that. and I hope that his gameplay and the way he plays the game is what ultimately determines his fate in the game.
Mm. Yes, well, we shall see, won't we?
We will see. It was an amazing episode in what has been an amazing season so far. It's unfortunate that happened. That was I think lives were changed in a real life way, not just in the game, but in a real life way by that episode. So it's one we'll remember for a very long time.
Exactly. Well,
next week, the merge.
We've got the merger, yeah. So Aussie has survived to make the merge, hasn't he? So
it does look that way.
So they might regret that, but we'll see.
Yeah, well, it's that fine line, isn't it? You need the strong players to get yourself through to the merge, but then once you reach the merge, they become very, very strong in individual immunities, and it can be very hard to get them out of the game. So it's going to be fun as we move into this next stage of the game.
And we still have Ty has 2 idols as well.
Well, we've got Ty with an idol, we've got Troy Zan with an idol, and we've got Debbie, who has her advantage of an extra vote at some point as well. So there are some people there with some things up their sleeve.
Yep, there's lots of moving pieces in this game, I think, coming up.
There certainly are. So looking forward to next week.
Yeah, that's right. Now, just before we go, just that website address again, if you can please leave us an iTunes review, that would be fantastic. That will just really help the podcast and would show your support for the podcast. That website address is dropyourbuffs.com/review.
Awesome.
Well, thanks again, Craig, for another interesting discussion.
Yep. Thank you, Stu. Always good to be here. Hope you have a great Easter.
Thank you. You too. We'll see you next time.
Happy Easter to all our listeners. See you later.
See you. Okay. Thanks for that, Craig.
Is that all right?
Yep. That's great.
I didn't find that one easy. I was trying to be extremely diplomatic.
Yeah. No. I think it's. I think that's good. Yeah. No. It'll be good.
Yeah. I think that was all right.
Yeah.
I'm definitely gonna listen to that one back once you post it. I just want to be absolutely sure we haven't said anything that could be a problem, but I'm sure we have. I don't think we have, but we'll both diplomat. It always sounds better when I listen to it back too, compared to. Every single time we record one of these things, at the end of it, I think I'm not sure how that sounded. It always sounds fine when I listen to it. So, yeah. So what was out of interest? What did the kids watch it?
Yeah.
What was their reaction?
Just Eliana, hang on. I'll just stop this recording now. Just so.
Sorry, you're recording. Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
Because I'll just see if I can.
Can you chop all that last bit out?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course. Hang on. I'll just call you back.
Okay. No worries.
Just so that
Yeah, all good.